I am Tenitra Batiste, and no scary Terry for the Falcons to deal with today. Was scary day for the former Falcons, but not for the Falcons faithful here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and this offense looks pretty good when they execute.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and that's exactly how this win was supposed to look.
ATL! ATL!
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman and Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, Falcons offense. Welcome to 2025. We'll discuss, and it was bend, don't break, but we'll download on some of the good things we saw from this Falcons defense in this team's win over the Washington Commanders today. And it feels good to be able to give out some game balls again. We'll talk about that and who our honorees are in week 4. And we'll talk, of course, about special teams, some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly in this 34-27 win by these Atlanta Falcons over the Washington Commanders. So listen, guys, a return to the A was just what the doctor seemed to order for a very anemic Falcons offense, to say the least, that we've seen for the first couple of weeks this season. And for the first time since 2022-2023, Jarvis TJ Yates had responsibility overseeing the wide receivers. This came, of course, after the Falcons decided to part ways with Ike Hilliard last week. So for you, when you look at this Falcons wide receiver core, or receiver core, because tight ends included in that, with the group getting their first touchdown of the season today, how do you think that receiver core did this week?
I thought Zach Robinson did a good job of putting those guys in position to succeed. Right, you saw Drake London in motion a little bit more, and you saw him being targeted, being the first read coming out his break, especially when he was matched up against Marshawn Lattimore. We all know about him. He's reachy grabby and can't cover, so he's just that type of guy. So man, that was pretty decent right there. Anyway, did a Project Pat impersonation right there. But yeah, I think that you saw Darnell Mooney, you saw those guys being in sync, and not only did Zach Robinson put those guys in position to succeed, you saw Michael Penix being able to connect with those guys. The throws, oh my gosh, they were just coming out of his arm today, and those guys was right there, and then you didn't see anyone in position because those guys were being schemed open. Like those guys were open, and I think Michael Penix was making the necessary throws to be able to move this offense up and down the field. And I think that was the main thing that I saw from those wide receivers. They were put in position to succeed, and then the quarterback was able to connect with those guys, and Drake London was able to have a day that we've been expecting him to have. Coming off the season that he had last year.
Right. And if we're being honest too, Jarvis, we are a quarter of the way into the regular season. And so you expect that you're seeing a healthier Drake London.
Sure.
So probably closer to 100% as we've seen in this season. You can even say the same for Darnell Mooney. So I do think that matters as well. And it's repetitions too. You're talking about the 4th game of the regular season, an offense that for the most part starters didn't play in the preseason. So maybe this is where you kind of start to hit your stride. So we'll talk about Michael Penix Jr., of course. But yeah, nice day for him. 20 of 26. We said we didn't want to see him slinging it all over the field and slinging it all over the yard out of necessity. But if that opportunity presents itself, sure, take advantage of that. So nice day from him, rather. 307 yards officially. And just one sack of the day, one pick, a couple touchdowns. Nothing that you wouldn't be pleased and proud of from Michael Penix Jr. But for you, Aaron, this was a game where, again, we saw TJ Yates go back to being over the wide receivers for the first time in a couple seasons. You saw an uptick from those wide receivers. But overall, how do you feel that they did in this game against the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, this game looked like the games that we have been expecting from this team all along, right?
Yeah.
And T, you mentioned it, and I got to, because it's the brand, 3 games that the Falcons played, the offense kind of struggled, and then the 4th game, and I'm just doing the math, and I'm like, oh, 3 preseason games. So it took them 3 games until okay. So this is the week 1 that they played.
I was coming out, baby. Pick it up, and I love it.
Figure out a way.
Gotta push it, But yeah, no, I'm joking. But like Drake London looked like Drake London in this game, right?
Yes.
He had a number, had that big catch, that 40+ yard on the double move, had the touchdown. Just kind of being that security blanket on some of these in-breaking routes. You got to see Drake London over the middle of the field. It's like, oh, what is this?
Yeah.
I've never seen the Falcons throw the ball over the middle of the field. But you got to see some of that. And so to me, like, this was the version of the Falcons offense that we had spent all offseason hyping up, and they finally delivered. And bring up the TJ Yates point of, like, we talked about this past week, where it's like, whether you think Ike Hilliard deserved to be fired or not, the simple truth was this offense's engine is fueled by their wide receiver core. And you saw Drake London have a big game. You saw Kyle Pitts have a big game. Mooney was quiet in part due to the injury he suffered, but you did get to see a good catch from him early in the game. You got to see a good catch from him for his replacement in Casey Washington in this game. So, it did feel like the engine got revved up with the wide receiver core playing up to what we had not seen them. Again, how much of that is on TJ Yates, Ike Hilliard's firing, the sense of urgency that firing does, the fact that these guys are finally healthy after starting the season slow, the reps that, certain guy missed because he wasn't healthy during the summer that he now got this week, and all that stuff. So all of that, I think, comes into play, but you certainly saw this offense look good, and I don't think it's a coincidence because their weapons were looking good as well.
Yeah, and Jarvis, interestingly enough, you have to really think about that. We don't know for sure because you're only going to see it probably 2 or 3 games in a row, and then kind of know whether or not the move with TJ Yates, parting ways with Ike Hilliard, was even a part of this. But in your first look at TJ Yates and, of course, by default, Zach Robinson and what they schemed in order to get their wide receivers open, put those guys in position to succeed, do you feel like maybe it was a little bit of success because of the way TJ Yates and Z-Rob tried to use their wide receivers today?
I don't know if it was because of Ike Hilliard being fired. I can't necessarily say that. I feel like I would have to be in the meeting rooms to be, to fully understand and answer that question. And maybe a couple games in. Yeah, in a couple of games, down the road under their belt as well. So because I just feel like it all boils down to the quarterback playing better. It all boils down to the OC putting guys in position to succeed, scheming guys open. The running, having the foundation of your offense, even though the running game wasn't all that great, where they had 37 carries for 128 yards, average about 3.5 a pop. It wasn't all that great, but it was effective. And I feel like there were moments where where everyone in the stadium knew you were going to run the football, and they would have some success. And there was also sometimes on the other side of that too. But I think overall, the running game did exactly what it needed to do, specifically towards the end of the third quarter and that drive towards the end of the fourth when they end up getting the field goal to kind of put the game out of reach.
Right. And there were some times even on those first couple of drives as well, only because of, if nothing else, the mix that gives you the opportunity to be able to run some play action. Because when you look back at that first drive and thinking about the fact that was over 8 minutes off the clock, a mix of 9 runs and 5 pass plays, the second drive, of course, which was the one that led to the touchdown. I think, like you said, Jarvis, the run game did what it was supposed to do in the moments when it was supposed to do it there in that first quarter, and then in that critical third quarter to kind of put some separation in there for the Falcons. But for you, Aaron, when you kind of look at it, do you see, and again, early returns, it's just one game, but do you think this was the success of this passing game was about the way the TJ Yates and by default Z-Rob schemed for those receivers today?
It's hard to say. I mean, to me, it looked like the same offense they had been running with a couple of tweaks that they've been doing all season long. And as Jarvis said, the quarterback was hitting the throws. The receivers were catching the passes and getting open. You had guys breaking tackles after the catch, Bijan getting matched up. So to me, the probably the one big difference was you got a lot more of Bijan in the passing game than we hadn't seen before. But like we saw that last year against Washington, where they tried to scheme up Bijan one-on-one with Bobby Wagner. You saw in that game they weren't quite able to hit all those throws that they schemed up. This week they were able to hit a lot of those throws in this game. And so again, like it's hard to say like, oh, they really, completely revamped it. It was just like, the things that they were scheming up, it worked because guys were making the throws and making the catches. And I don't know if it's deeper than that, but obviously, once we get a look at the all 22, we might be able to see some subtle tweaks and be like, oh, that's a new thing that they hadn't been doing all year long. But for the most part, it just felt like everybody was on the same page, which I think is what was behind the move to make the changes at the coaching to improve the communication, to get more details right. And you saw that manifest on the field today.
Yeah, and you called it out earlier in the week, Free. Bobby Wagner is 77 years old. So, sometimes that makes it a little bit difficult to keep up with a guy like Bijan Robinson, who had himself a day, like you said, just in the run game, in the pass game. But I felt like it was especially impressive in him receiving 4 receptions for 106 yards. That's what you love to see, because you utilize Bijan Robinson in those spaces and places that are special, where you have really just a handful of running backs in this entire league that can do the things that he can do in the passing game. So yeah, definitely love seeing him utilized the right way. And going back to that first quarter where you saw the Falcons able to do something that we just didn't see them do for 4.5 quarters, and that was punch it into the end zone. I mean, what else do you think made that drive effective? What made the drive so effective today, Jarvis, where we actually saw the Falcons not, other than that first drive, if you will, and later in the game, we saw them not just settling for field goals, but actually being able to score touchdowns?
It was one of the things that I felt like they were consistent with is like once he got close to the red zone or got into the red zone, there was always this little funky little blip. Like, Bijan had the fumble. And then, when you think about, the silly cute play call that he had, that went from -7. They were able to overcome it and score and get into the end zone. But it was just those little things that would happen, whether it be a procedural penalty or offside, jumping off sides or something like that. It will always be something that would happen once they get down close and then essentially kill their drive. But when that happened today, they were able to overcome it. And I think that when you overcome things like that, you got guys making plays. But we saw Drake come up with those big catches. You saw Kyle Pitts come up with a huge catch on 3rd down, even when the guy's reaching and grabbing and basically fouled him or whatever for the flag. But he still was able to make the catch and essentially seal this thing for this team. So it was just a lot of guys just stepping up and making big plays. And like I said, they were put in position to succeed, and they were actually making plays. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people were kind of in their bag. Essentially, everybody was in their bag with anything Raheem Morris said this week. But it seemed like people were very upset about him. Yeah, it's on Mike. Mike is going to lead us. Mike got to do his doggone thing. And people took that as, Raheem Morris just absolving himself of any type of, being a head coach of this team, essentially. But that's exactly what happened, though. Like, he said exactly what needed to happen. I said that Michael Penix needed to have one of those type of games to show people, to shut people up, because people were complaining all week about this offense, all week about Zach Robinson and everything that's wrong with this offense. But at the end of the day, the players played better. They made plays. And what did Free say? I thought it was a great, he summed it up. He said, this offense looked exactly how we thought it should look, or how we expected it to look coming into this season. You know why we had those expectations? Because we saw it last year. We saw them light that bad boy up against the Carolina Panthers. And guess what they did this year? And against the Commanders too. Michael Penix, all he needs was another chance. They probably going to win that football game.
Yeah.
So, we have to understand and believe what we see, folks. Believe what you see. Michael Penix can play football. And guys are going to have bad football games. So when those games happen, you have to understand it, figure out why it happened, and then guess what? You got to play better. And that's exactly what they did.
Indeed. And Aaron, when you kind of look at especially some of those early drives where, yes, the Falcons were able to punch it in. And I know initially disappointment because you walk, well, half disappointment because Parker Romo made a field goal. So that there was some success. There was some appreciation and a sigh of relief with that. But I think the sigh of relief really came when the Falcons were able to score. What did you see from them today that allowed them to have that ability to just punch it in, especially early?
Yeah, it felt like the biggest shift was the run game. You get a couple of you had two 15-yard scores from Algier and
Yes.
and Bijan in it. It's like, hey, if we're at the 15,
Right.
just run it into the end zone. Hey, that's a pretty easy red zone conversion right there. Just run it into the end zone. And so you saw that, and then you saw some solid running once they got in scoring position to set up some of those passing touchdowns that Penix threw in this game. So it just felt like everything was in sync. And to me, with the red zone struggles, because Penix's inconsistency and youth and whatnot, I don't know if you're going to be able to rely on him. He did it this week, and hopefully he'll continue to do it. But again, because of the youth, you're just like, okay, well, is this going to be something where we can consistently rely on Penix on a third and whatever situation to be able to make the throw to score? And it's just like, it just becomes so much more easier if we can just run the football once we get into that side of the field, and the Falcons were able to do that. And that felt like the biggest difference from the previous weeks, where it's just like, okay, just, Tyler Algier, just beat Von Miller and then truck a dude into the end zone. Like that's easy, right? Like, of course, like, it's not like Von Miller's a Hall of Famer or anything like that. Like you can do that every week, right? I guess. So
no, Von Miller was out there. I was like Von Miller playing today?
Yeah, it was like 24. Who's that? Like, what is that? And this is Von Miller. I was like, ooh.
I've never said that ever watching Von Miller play football. By the
Said
way.
never. Said no one. Ever. Yeah. Well, Aaron, you speak of a big difference, or the biggest difference. One of the biggest differences wasn't actually on the field. It was on the sidelines. Did it work? We'll take that under further review. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. So playing Prize Picks is really fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards, or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, or down here in ATL, if it's Bijan Robinson with his ball in the hand, you might want to have a player projection for him too, because whether it's on the passing side or the running side, the guy is just lights out. Now, with Prize Picks, you got to love how quick it is. I mean, you can make your lineup in under a minute. And the favorite part is probably this cool ad called Stacks. If you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass yards, Bijan Robinson, rush yards, Bijan Robinson, touchdowns, Bijan, all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And a new feature, the injury reboot. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. And what you're going to love about it, just like I do, is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. So think about this. If you like 5 Hour Energy like I do, it definitely reminds me like they're grape flavors, and they've just got some really cool flavors, but in the grape family, that's kind of the one I like. I think it's because it reminds me of like grape soda or grape punch or grape drinks. Anyway, I love grape drinks, so that's why I like it. And I think it's really cool that for me, there's really no aftertaste. There's no crash, if you will. So it kicks in really fast. It's sugar-free. And again, you don't have to worry about crashing later, because I never have. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine, not a coffee person. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, guys, last week, Aaron, the Falcons made another bold move, so to speak. Raheem Morris announcing that to hopefully improve communication and make things move just a little bit faster, they bring Zach Robinson out of the booth and onto the field. So did you see some things that maybe were executed a little bit better, a little more crisply, a little more efficiently with Z-Rob on the sidelines?
Yeah, it didn't seem like they had any procedural issues this Sunday, like they seem to have every Sunday prior to this point, when it came to getting the plays in on time and burning timeouts and getting delays of game, like the delay game they got in this game, they purposefully got because they were trying to draw Washington offside to try to convert a fourth down for kicking a field goal. And so it did feel like the communication was there. It did feel like the plays were getting in on time. If you prescribe to the theory that the reason why Penix was struggling was because he wasn't getting enough opportunities pre-snap to look over the deep before snapping the ball. Well, he got plenty of opportunities this week to look over the defense pre-snap because the communication was there, and it seemingly worked. So, there seems to be smoke there to that fire and whatnot. So, for the most part, it felt like everything the Falcons wanted from this move down to the sideline with Zach Robinson to improve the communication, to eliminate the procedural issues. Did we even get a false start in this game? I think we maybe got one from Ray McLeod.
It was Ray. It was on Ray.
Yeah, but like none from the offensive line. So even that part, like
screen pass too.
Yeah,
tripping today.
That's why it's hard to say like TJ Yates was the problem, because Ray went down and like everybody else went up, and it's like I guess it was a curse or something with the wide receiver room. Like someone's has to be bad, but we didn't even get the patented Elijah Wilkinson false start in this game. So it's like clearly, everybody seemed to be on the same page with the exception of Ray in this game. So it did feel like what the Falcons were looking for, that better communication was there.
Yeah, and you think about Jarvis last week, how there were some issues with signals and plays coming through the headphone or headsets and the helmet. And you can never tell like how much of an impact that will have across the entirety of the game, because you can't hear, that's throwing your rhythm off, and then kind of, you don't know. Once you get out of rhythm, how challenging it is to be able to come back and get in that rhythm, if you will. So yeah, being on the sidelines, I think does make a difference. But for you, did you see some things that were cleaned up from last week or even weeks prior to by having Zach Robinson on the sidelines?
I think that we got a chance to see Michael Penix be able to be comfortable at the line of scrimmage, right? Like Freed mentioned, being able to see, getting those pre-snap reads, that stuff matters, man. Like, especially when you talk about going in motion. All right, is that linebacker going across the formation with Charlie Warner if he goes in motion? All right, is a cornerback following Drake London, which we saw a lot more of, him motion across the formation. Is the corner going with him? Who's going with him? If it's Marshawn Lattimore, that's my first read, guaranteed. I like that matchup, and that's the thing. That's the beauty of offense, right? When you're being able to adjust on the fly. Okay, maybe Mooney was my first read in this particular play, but like if I like that matchup with Drake versus Lattimore, that's where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try to see if that's where he can get open as quick as we possibly could have thought, like when we call this play. So I think that was the biggest difference for me. And I really feel like we aren't going to really get a really good grasp as to how this helps them until they go on the road and go play the 49ers. Because I was kind of expecting Michael Penix to have a better game because they were at home. The crowd is quiet. Everybody's like, all right, let the offense cook. Like, be quiet. Don't say anything. And that's the exact opposite of that when you're going on the road. So I think that we'll be able to see that. It'll be very clear as to Zach Robinson moving down to the field just from a communication standpoint and being able to get a good grasp of what the defense is doing before the ball is snapped.
Yeah. And Aaron, speaking of Michael Penix Jr., really start to finish, we know, yes, he did have the pick, if you will, but ultimately speaking, start to finish, a nice day for Michael Penix Jr. But what for you was the most impressive about how MPX played today?
It was nice to see him try to get on the move a little bit more and get some of those off structure, second reaction plays, whatever you want to call it, where it felt like a few too often the first 3 games where like if that first read wasn't there, he was checking the ball down, he was throwing the ball away. And in this game, even though I can't recall how many of them he actually hit when he got outside the pocket, it was nice to sort of see Penix try to extend plays and do a little bit more rather than just immediately go to the check down. And you saw the one third down scramble on one of those drives late in the game. That was huge for them. And so like it was nice to see that from Penix, because I do feel like one of the bigger weaknesses of his overall body of work is his ability to throw outside the pocket. And I think as we move forward and we put more on him to sort of convert in the red zone, you kind of need that ability to extend some of those plays, because when things get condensed, like it's that first read's not always going to be there like it was at times in this game. And so you need to be able to find ways to, give your receivers time to get open. And I felt like Penix did a much better job of that today, even if it didn't always necessarily result in a completion afterwards. But it's just nice to see him willing to do more of that. And I do feel like those plays will be coming as he's more willing to do that moving forward.
Yeah, JD, I got to admit, maybe the play that made me smile the most, other than the spin around 14-yard touchdown from Bijan Robinson, was probably that play from Michael Penix Jr. where he pump fakes again, but then he's able to use his legs to move the chains. Again, we're not looking for him to be a true dual threat quarterback. It's just that, hey, we know you got legs. Use them when you need to, if that's what's going to extend a play or if that's what's going to move the chains, because that also helps to keep the defense honest. Because Michael Penix Jr. can move his legs if he needs to. And those are the types of things I think we saw today as well, just making sure that this Falcons offense was able to keep this Commanders defense at bay and kind of keep them on their toes. That's what I saw too, a little bit less of a vanilla scheme, a vanilla strategy from Zach Robinson in terms of how he utilized really every player on the field, honestly, whether that was your wide receivers, where you had 6 of them, 6 different pass catchers, if you will, because we've got to include Bijan Robinson. But I want to go back to as well, we talked a little bit about Drake London. We obviously talked about Michael Penix Jr., but this is one of those games where JD Kyle Pitts had a good game.
Yeah. Five catches for 70 yards. And here's the big number, that 14-yard average. That is over a first down. You can't ask for no better, clip than that, right? Like that's what you want right there. Right. Like over a first down, every time you touch the rock, like you moving the chains, that's exactly what you want from your tight end. And I think that I think it just speaks to his level of comfort with Michael Penix as his quarterback. Because I feel like this might be the first quarterback that he can actually relate to. And I know people might look at me kind of crazy when I say that, but like I think it makes a difference when a guy can talk to you on the same level. So like his first year, Matt Ryan was his quarterback, right? All-time great Falcon, best quarterback in franchise history. All right, rookie. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna be where I need to be, right? And then you go Desmond Ridder, okay, whatever. Then you got Marcus Mariota, okay, whatever. Then you bring in Kirk Cousins, who is a prep machine. Like, hey man, I need you to be right here at 1.5 seconds. If you're not there 1.5 seconds, I'm not gonna look at you, and I'm gonna go the other way with it. Other way with the rock. And then that's the thing that he might not necessarily, because a lot of times you got to understand how guys click, how guys move. That's why being a head coach, you almost have to be somewhat of a psychiatrist to be able to figure out what to say, how to deal with guys. And I think that Michael Penix is such a cool cat. Like he can relate to him. He said like he wasn't a golfer at all, but he said, "Hey man, I want to play because there are a lot of my guys that love to play golf, and his tight end loves to play golf." So he made it a point to get on his level, start to relate with him. And I feel like we're starting to see some of that bleed over onto the field, because like there were moments where when Michael Penix threw the rock to 8, I was just like, yep, he gonna get this one, because whoever he was matched up against, it was just like, all right, there's nothing you can do. And I'm talking about just the way he's been attacking the football this year.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just aggressive, and I think that it's a lot of that has to do with the relationship that he has with his current quarterback, and I think that that's going to do nothing but continue to grow as we go along, because you're talking about 5 for 70 in the tug, like, and 14 yards a pop. Like, that's exactly what you want from your first round tight end.
Yeah. And I think in looking at this, and one play in particular, like you said, when he had that opportunity on that third down to move the chains, I think what excited me was the second effort, because if there were moments, and again, not a knock on Kyle Pitts, but just keeping it real, there may have been moments in other seasons where catch the ball, initial effort, oh wow, if the chains don't move, the chains don't move, right? But that particular, you saw him say, hey, like, he's going for it. So yeah, I think aggressive is an okay word to use with what we're seeing out of what Kyle Pitts was able to do, particularly seeing that. And then one more, we'll I know we got to wrap up, but man, that Bijan Robinson, like, is there anything free that the dude can't do? It's, I mean, just another scary Bijan type of day where he's doing his thing wherever he's placed in this offense. But because we've been talking a little bit more about the receiving side, let me go back to the rush side as well. With Bijan Robinson, 17 carries, 75 yards, a touchdown. Tyler Algier, 16 to 51, a touchdown. I think it's important to note that while the numbers may not look gaudy on the run side, if you will, a respectable 128 yards. But Aaron, it was what they did when they had to tote the rock that was so impressive, both of them.
Yeah, they were efficient. And, you heard it in the broadcast, like, it wasn't because they were running through these wide open lanes. A lot of it, we talked about that Algier run where he had to make a guy miss in the backfield and then get yards. And you saw that from Bijan. And again, I don't want to sit here and knock the offensive line like they played poorly or anything like that. It was like once guys got to the line of scrimmage, then you saw the running lanes. But there was plenty of plays where it was penetration. And one of the things that stood out about this running back group with Bijan and Tyler Algier is that they get more yards than what is blocked for them consistently. And you saw that this Sunday, and you consistently see that with Bijan's cutting ability when he gets into space and whatnot. I was listening to a podcast once, and they said something like he brings that blue magic. He brings that ability to walk.
Tell me what blue magic is, because if you guys reference blue magic one more time, I feel like my card is about to.
You need to go watch American Gangster.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
that's your homework.
Okay.
Watch American Gangster and then get back to it.
Okay. Yeah, because clearly I have missed the analogy every single show for like the past 3 weeks. And I was feeling some type of way, like, what are they talking about? But that's okay. You just gave me my homework assignment. I am going to be here for my homework assignment. Apparently, the defense was on some level prepared for their homework assignment that we gave them this past week as well, because there were a couple of areas in which Jeff Ulbricht's unit showed out quite nice. We'll talk about that in Next Up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Rougiette. So what do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Well, confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual, time to meet Rougiette Go Long. Oh my goodness gracious. Now, guys, you probably also heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. So that's exactly where Rougiette Go Long comes in. It's not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. So Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. Now, ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom, guys? Well, head to RUGIET.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first offer. That's RUGIET.com, promo code Locked On NFL. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. The process is simple. You're connecting with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships directly right to your door. Again, that's RUGIET.com, and use promo code Locked On NFL for 15% off your first order. All right. So, Jarvis, when we think about this defense, we were kind of looking at it last week and saying, it wasn't that it was a bad performance despite the final score of 30-0. A lot of that was just because of the situations that the Panthers defense, or the lack of productivity from the Falcons offense, put there. A lot of it was because they put the Panthers offense in position to score those 30 points, as opposed to, say, kind of putting that all at the feet of this Falcons defense. But let's fast forward to today. Commanders' first drive of the day, Billy Bowe, your guy, and Leonard Floyd with the tackle for loss. And then you look up Zach Harrison, sacked Marcus Mariota to force a 3-and-out. Falcons are now actually tied with the Giants for the most sacks in the NFL this season, by the way. But again, I know, right, Jarvis? Like, impressive. Like, exactly. Like, let's just give the guys all their flowers, and let's give them their flowers too, because Jarvis was determined that what was not going to happen was a Jeff George situation with Marcus Mariota. Didn't happen, by the way. Only 16 of 27 for just 156 yards, sacked a couple times, picked off. Overall, when you look at this defense and what they were able to do today, how were they able to really get that meaningful pressure, bring that back to the forefront today?
The only explosive play they were able to get was in the run game. Like, that was kind of awkward to watch a little bit, because like Washington kind of just leaned into it. Because if I see another tackle block down and then a guard come around the edge and popping those little black jerseys up out the way, and the little Bill or Jacory or whatever his doggone name is bouncing up in there for 10 to 15 yards or 20 yards, or Chris Rodriguez going up in that thing too, I feel like, I'd be sick right now. I was really sick, because I don't like that. Like, people team just lining up and just, hey man, we about to do something about it, and they couldn't do anything about it. And I was just
okay,
like,
we're going to talk about that in a minute. I promise you. We're going to talk about that leaky run defense. I wanted to put you in your happy place. That's why we started off with pressure. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So I think that once they were able to, there was some good coverage in the first, and that was the reason why they were able to get home, get to Marcus Mariota, because you didn't see any guys beat anyone clean. There was a lot of second move to kind of disengage to be able, and then you start chasing after Marcus Mariota. So yeah, I think that was the main reason there was a lot of good coverage. Now, granted, talking to me about who was out there to be covered, Deebo Samuel, he got his stuff later on, but early on, you saw a lot of sticky coverage, and guys were playing some solid defense in the pass game. So yeah, I think that was the main way they were able to essentially force Marcus Mariota to make some good throws, early on. And I think that's why they were able to get some pressure and be able to get them on the ground.
Indeed. So, Aaron, what do you like in terms of the pressure, or what the Falcons were able to do up front today?
Yeah, I thought the interior guys brought it. I think that was a big thing that was missing last week, where they had some advantageous matchups that they didn't quite take advantage of. I saw Dorless being disrupted, Rook being disrupted, Zach Harrison being disrupted, David Onyemata being disrupted, Jalen Walker being disrupted, Leonard Floyd being disrupted, Arnold Ebiketie. Who else? James Pierce. I'm like, I'm naming everybody. So if I leave off somebody, that's going to be shade to them. I don't want anybody to think I'm throwing shade or anything. But basically, the point being, everybody was being disruptive. But I thought the interior guys were doing a great job, whether it was in the run game, whether it was the pass rush, sort of collapsing that middle, and then that forced Mariota to not necessarily want to be able to step into those throws or fleeing outside the pocket, and then you could kind of get him on one side of the field and cut off half of the other field. And so that made things a little bit easier for this defense. So I think overall, this defensive front was able to assert its will against this Washington offensive line, both, as far as the pass rush goes, early in the game, I thought they did a pretty solid job of run defense. It got a little leaky towards the end, but for the most part, I think they were able to control the line of scrimmage effectively enough to force Washington to play how they wanted them to play, as opposed to, I think that was the issue last year last week, I should say, where Carolina was able to play the game that they wanted to play, and the Falcons didn't really do a whole lot to disrupt that, and I felt like they flipped that this week.
Yeah, and what Jeff Ulbricht's defense has been able to do, especially in the first half of games this season, it's been impressive. They've allowed 10 or fewer first half points in all 4 games. Now, like you guys said, it got a little leaky, got scary at times in the second half, but ultimately the Falcons prevailed. So what was that one thing, Jarvis, that at least allowed the Falcons defense to be able to hold serve in the important moments in the second half?
I think the Falcons were kind of soft on the edges towards the end of the game, right? Like Chris Rodriguez was able to break out with almost 48 yarder, and you just saw guys, they were able to get to the second level easy. Guys were getting swallowed up by the pulling guard, and they were just absorbing those guys, and the running back was able to, now granted, those guys they were able to get up in those holes and make some plays, but you just kind of didn't see the linebackers, from time to time. Like they kind of disappeared in those plays, kind of got lost in the trash, so to speak. And you just saw the running back skeeting up out of there and kind of doing their own thing. So I think that, when you don't play it the right way, when you don't squeeze it the right way, in those tackle down guard around plays or in those counter plays, it can mess with you. And I think that, the Commanders were able to get some drives going because of that play in particular. And I think that, now granted, they made the Falcons defense made the plays that they were supposed to make, ultimately. But, this is something that we've had conversations about on Locked on Falcons, on this Falcons Squad Show, on the football party when we were doing those. It's just that this run game is going to be something that they're going to have to continue to get better at on a weekly basis, or figure out a way to get better at it, because teams are going to see this and they're like, okay, we know how solid this pass game is, or they're the number one pass defense in the NFL right now. But oh man, we can get somewhere, because I think the Commanders end up averaging about 6.7 yards a pop. Yeah. Teams are going to try to run the football on you. So that's the thing. That's my biggest concern at this moment.
Yeah, and that pretty much was across the board. Like even Marcus Mariota got in on a little bit of the fun, but yeah, they kind of did it running back by committee, but everybody kind of got in on it and had some level of success. And, Aaron, that's what I wanted to ask you now. Granted, were the Falcons able to still do the bend but don't break, or kind of the Oreo style that you and I kind of coined last season? Sure, because we're talking about a win today. So that's a good thing. But it has to be a little bit disconcerting to think that, and granted, no Jaden Daniels, no Scary Terry McLaurin, so maybe not as potent of a passing game as you would have expected. Of course, you're going to expect Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury and company to use their running game more, but it still has to be a little disconcerting to think that run game went off like it did today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the big thing was the Falcons were able to get an early lead. Yes. Right, that's something that Jeff Ulbrich talked about during the offseason, was like, we've built this defense to play with leads, and that's a contributing factor to why they have not been that great stopping the run. It's like, why would we stop the run when we're up? That we got to force these teams to throw the football, and that worked this week. If the offense had gotten off to a slower start, Washington probably would have been a little bit more committed to running the football throughout this game, controlling the clock, and so that's kind of the concern, where that combination of, if the offense isn't performing and the run defense isn't performing, that's where, again, it flips back to the opposing team maybe being able to control the tempo of the game a little bit more effectively. And obviously, because the offense was able to put points, that kept putting pressure on Washington to have to air it out, and their passing game, wasn't just really there for them on this Sunday, in part due to the pass rush, in part due to some solid coverage on the back end and whatnot. But it is going to be a challenge for this team. Now if they're going to put up 34 points a game, I don't know if it's going to be that big a deal, but it's still going to be an issue. So it's one of those things where it's just like, as long as the offense is clicking, it's not a huge issue, but we're talking about it because as we've seen so far this year, not every week the offense is always clicking. And so it's just like, this is something that they're still going to have to work. This defense, this is the last element that this defense has to kind of figure out how to be a little bit more successful stopping the run.
Yeah, well, speaking of clicking, special teams did and didn't all at the same time for the Falcons. We'll talk about that and break that down next up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. This NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So if you love FanDuel, it gives you so many ways to play. I mean, you can build a parlay, you can try player props, you can even follow the live lines during games, and it makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, a lot of ways to play. You can build parlays, player props, and even follow the live lines during games. So make it more fun and more exciting to watch football because you'll have a little something riding on the action. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So on the special team side of the ball, it was up and down because, Aaron, you can give some credit, if you will, to the fact that, hey, Parker Romo made field goals today for starters. And you can give credit to Bradley Pinion for knocking a couple balls deep. In fact, punting one that landed inside the 20. And hey, we're not having a conversation about a returner having -2 yards. So there are some good things to say about special teams. So let's start there. What are some of the good things that you saw on the Falcons special teams today?
Well, Washington's special team is really good. If you watched the Raiders game last week, that was a huge part of their success last week with a 90-yard punt return. I think Deebo Samuel had like a 70-yard kickoff return last week as well. That was a big part of that. And, it wasn't perfect for special teams. I know you want me to say positive things first,
yes,
but
please, sir.
I think it could. Basically, I say that because I think it could have been a lot worse, right? When it comes to the coverage units being able to keep this specific team contained because they have such effective returners in this game. You saw a couple of muff kicks, right? They know that, Washington was able to recover, but like that's the coverage unit putting pressure. My guy, the guy that I've been standing for all off season long, Mike Ford Jr., right? That's my guy, Jarvis. That's the guy, I was sitting here at roster cut down saying Mike Ford needs to be on this roster. This guy is a core special teams player. There was not a single person on Locked On Falcons questioning the decision to keep Mike Ford. Okay, I don't know why you have that look, Jarvis. Like,
okay.
But Mike Ford is my.
We don't roll by the tape. All right, cool.
Mike. You just gotta gaslight listenership, Jarvis. If I say it loud enough, they'll believe me that's what actually happened.
I guess so. Yes, we'll go with that.
Mike Ford's coverage was really good in this game. Felipe Franks had a touchdown saving tackle in this game, and then of course, as you said, like Bradley Pinion doing a great job at the end of the first half, pinning Washington deep. You saw the field goals and whatnot in this game, and hey, guys actually were able to field kickoff returns and get a couple of yards returning them. So like all in all, special teams performed.
Yeah, and I mean Jamal Agnew coming back from injury. I mean, finally being back. I think that was important because we talked about the inconsistencies last week and like, okay, Marquise Williams, who's going to be your main guy? Who's going to be that guy for you when it's time to return a kick that you can have confidence in. So he had 3 of them for 69 yards, averaging 23 per return. Jarvis, still not a bad deal with what we saw out of Jamal Agnew today, and really just some of those positives that we saw from special teams.
I think the first one was John Parker Romo when he went out for that first field goal attempt. I don't know about y'all, but I was sitting there.
Held your breath.
I had a little pit in my stomach. I was like, okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, that was good. All right, okay. That was fine. Oh, and then when, they would start seeming like they were kind of playing for the field goal to go up by 10, I was like, I don't know about this. And then they were like, oh, yeah, 26-yard field goal. Okay, all right, okay. All right. He should miss this one, know. So, but that was a good thing to see him going 0 for 2 last week against Carolina Panthers, him going 2 for 2 this week. Hey, you can't ask for anything else, because as much as entertaining as a kicker carousel would be in the first 8 weeks of this season, I don't want to talk about that. I don't.
I told you.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I had a conversation with a guy today at the Publix because I was picking up some fried chicken for the family, after church. I just got out of church, and that guy stopped me. He was like, Jarvis, man. And I knew what the way people call my name, I know what's about to happen. I know we're about to get into a conversation about sports. They were like, Jarvis, man. I was like, what's up, dog? Man, don't talk about the team like that. I was like, hey, man, look, I just talk about what I see. But, I don't want to talk about kickers being brought in and politicking for a kicker that kicked at UGA. Like, I don't want to do all that stuff. I just want to be in a space where, what I'm saying? We're talking about good stuff like we're doing right now. Like I felt like I spoke this into existence today. Like, yeah, man, we're going to talk about some good stuff. We're going to be positive. And John Parker Romo, you know what I'm saying? I can call him by his full name. You know what I'm saying? And not mistake him for Tony. But another thing that I want to point out that I actually like, Ray McLeod was solid in the return game today as well. I like Ray in the return.
Give Ray McLeod his credit. You're all right.
He was solid. I like what I saw today from him in their return game. So, there might be something he might need to look into a little bit more. Just saying, maybe, possibly. Maybe this was just he had the jitterbugs or something because he didn't look all that great on offense side of football. But I like what I saw from the special team unit.
Yeah. We'll take that. That a win is a win for Ray McLeod. But free, alas, there are some not so positives to talk about when it comes to special teams today. So clearly there were some things that were head scratchers for you that made you not so happy.
Yeah, I mean, they had that big return in this game from Luke McCaffrey. I can't remember which score that set up, but it was one of them. Shout out to Felipe Franks making a touchdown saving tackle because our guy Bradley Pinion for damn sure was like, I'm trying to get these checks, guys. So
that's my job description. One job, and that's not it.
I might be the same size as James Pierce. I might be 6'5", 240 pounds, but I don't play that job. Like that's not my job. Not
by their life.
Bradley Opinion was like, hey, who else is going to kick off if I make this tackle and get injured? Like, who else is going to do the job that you guys need me to do? So, Felipe, I'm gonna let you do it. I'm just gonna lay down, go to sleep. And it was like, okay, all right, Falcons special teams. It is what it is. But Washington was probably gonna get one in this game, and it was just like if we just hold them to that one, I think that's again. We're grading them on a curve because it was so bad last week that it's just like, and Washington's special teams was so good last week that it was just like, okay, it's probably not going to be perfect this week, but it was good enough, I think, outside of that one play with the Falcons special teams.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing we got to kind of keep in mind. And I'm glad you brought that up because as much as I can't wait to jump in on the special teams about how there were some moments where they just looked like they were just out of place and didn't know what to do. You have to give credit to the Washington Commanders and their special team because we all know how Dan Quinn emphasizes special teams, like especially now, because that was probably one of the reasons why he might get one of the reasons why he might got slid out of here back in 2020. So yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about, Jarvis. There was no mistakes on special teams during a 2020 season against the Dallas Cowboys team. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you forgot already? Okay, okay, I got you. You know, I got you. So, but seriously though, I think this is one of those situations where you have to look at taking consideration like who they were going up against and say, all right, for the most part, they had a really good, showing at home against their people. Against the home in front of the home crowd. Excuse me, and I think that but there is a spot that I did want to point out, and I thought it was just a little weird, a little awkward, and I think that was the instant where they had punted the football and you had D'Angelo Malone touch the ball, but you didn't have anyone yelling because the one word that you always supposed to hear is Peter. Essentially, get out of the way, move, because the ball might hit you. And he was just sitting there blocking like he didn't know what was going on. I'm just like, dog.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the only one. It was several Falcons players in the vicinity of that football. I'm just like, man, what is going on? Why is no one moving out of the way? Why is no one yelling at each other feverishly to get out of the way? And I think that was the moment where I got a little upset, and I was just like, all right, man, what is going on with this special team unit? So yeah, but for me, that was the big thing for me, T, that I was like, hey man, this is like, I don't know, what are y'all doing out there, basically?
Yeah, and it was tough because we wanted to, and when you see a score of like 34 to 27, you're thinking, okay, that's where we needed to be, at least at a minimum. Jarvis, I know you were talking 28 points for the team, but I think we also talked about the fact that we wanted to see all three phases bounce back. And I think that you could definitely give a solid bounce back free to the offensive side of the ball. And you can even say, I'd say bounce back, but hear me out on this one for defense, because they didn't play poorly last week. It was just the offense and special teams put the Panthers in position to succeed and made it difficult on the defense. So you could probably say the defense had a bounce back in that, hey, you put us in position to be good, and so we were. With special teams, I feel like, no, this was not a win in all three phases.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say that. I think special teams was better this week than it was last week. Could it get worse? Well, I don't want to say that on the Falcon show because Lord knows
the omen that is. Yes,
they will absolutely try. I do think the special teams, I think it was better. So I would say it was a bounce back game for the special teams, but they still have some things they got to clean up, and is kind of where you're at. And so it's like, okay, yeah. And it feels like some of those, like that issues that Jarvis just pointed out, which I had completely forgotten about. And thank you for reminding me, Jarvis, is such an easy fix. Like that shouldn't be a problem ever again. But, we'll see if the Falcons, whatever Falcon, you know how it goes.
Right, but I just hate free. Like you said, it's an easy fix. But in a pro game in the NFL, we shouldn't be having this conversation about the basics. That's I think, Jarvis, that's my only challenge with it. Is I agree with Free. Thank goodness it's an easy fix, but it's also a fix that shouldn't be happening, because come on now, guys. Like you've been at this long enough to know that's a basic thing that even I know. Hey, that's a call that should be made so that you're watching out for the ball. And I think what was bothersome in those instances that you mentioned is it wasn't just one player, and you just kind of wondering, okay, where's that discipline?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of those things where Marquise Williams will have to go lay into some guys. Like, hey man, y'all getting a little comfortable around here, because I'm not comfortable at all. I wanted to make sure everybody, I want people to stop talking about special teams, because one thing about special teams, when it's sucking, man, when it's going well, people don't talk about it.
Exactly. Like the O-line. Exactly. The fact that we did not talk about the O-line today, good thing.
When you're doing your job, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it until the end of the year. You start getting awards from it. You get recognized from it. So, we've had a lot of conversation about the kickers and cutting guys and saying bye to guys, saying hello to guys Y'all have a bad game. They sign the kickers to the practice squad. Like, oh, is this the next dude to come up? So yeah, it's just I think that stuff like that, basic 101 special team stuff, like I think that's going to be the stuff that he's going to have to drill down on and say, hey man, we had some good moments, but this can't happen again. Like, and I think that's like you said, you're going into a bye week, so they're going to dig into this tape as much as they possibly can, and then once and start getting ready for the Buffalo after this week. But I think that when they meet up at Flowery Branch, this is going to be discussed, and I think that they should be able to get this fixed.
Indeed. Well, hey, we appreciate the fact that we have the opportunity here on the Falcons Squad Show to talk about a win, because that's a beautiful thing for the Falcons to bounce back from that Panthers game. And the fact that you think about multiple players, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but even on the defensive side of the ball for the Commanders, but obviously Jaden Daniels being the most obvious. And you say to yourself, they should win, but they should have won last week. So when the Falcons actually do what they're supposed to do, what they should do, you still want to celebrate that. And I love something that Raheem Morris said. I'll leave you guys with this positive note. He said post-game, quote, "That was our apology to our fans today," saying that was the response by the offense that was vitally important coming off of a shutout. So that's the kind of thing you want to do, and you want to have that positive reaction heading into that bye week and just kind of leaving, coming back home and saying, hey, not just really the Panthers, Jarvis, but even the disappointment of taking an L against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in your home stadium. So to me, it's an apology for that, and also an apology for what the Falcons did on the road. But a lot of things that you saw that were encouraging in this Falcons 34-27 win over the Washington Commanders today. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked on Falcons with your host Aaron Freeman for more post-game coverage shortly. We'll see you soon.